7th of March 2024. This is one of that Let's Talk Skidmarks of mine, and this one I'm going to talk about ESKOM and solar in my home. We all understand and experience the frustrations of load shedding. Now I'm just going to play you a little video clip of the Minister of Electricity explaining to us what he's going to do about the load shedding. I am quite sure you are now just as much in the darkness as I am about this. I want to show you this. This is the load shedding schedule on Wednesday, the 6th of March 2024. And you can see there, it says no further load shedding scheduled for the Wednesday. And then it tells you Thursday, one session, Friday, one session, Saturday, one session, Sunday, one session, and nothing for Monday and Tuesday. Now this was at around 10 o'clock on Wednesday on our Power Watch group. And lo and behold, 2 o'clock, we get this. Suddenly, there's a session for Wednesday, 1900 to 2100, but it says active 2000 to 2100, so from 8 o'clock until 9 o'clock, only 1 hour. But look at Thursday, suddenly 3 sessions. Friday, 2 sessions. This is what we have to live with, and we can't plan. You can't plan anything around the load shedding schedules. And now you must try and imagine what it does to small businesses. I do not think the ordinary public understand the frustrations of the small businesses. And that is why you see thousands of them closing their shops. They just simply close the shop because they cannot continue. Now for us, for a guy like me, I work from my home and my office is here and everything, and my whole life is computer dependent. Load shedding is so disruptive. And as I've showed in previous skidmarks that I did about it, I used to use a UPS, and then I built a bigger battery bank onto the UPS. But the batteries do not like all that charging and discharging, charging and discharging. And they tell you when you buy the batteries that the damn thing has got so many cycles life and all of that. All I can say to you is my experience with 2 sets of lead carbon batteries. They last about 3 months and they're done. And that's a lot of money. And I have done the video where I decided to go solar. I did a video on the installation of how the inverter and the battery was installed in my house. And for reasons beyond my control, my installer couldn't do the solar panels at that stage. So I had only the inverter and the battery for about, I think, 4 months. Last weekend Friday, he started installing the solar panels. I bought 21 panels of 460 watt, and it's installed in 3 banks of 7 panels each. Now, people, when they talk solar, the first thing that many guys tells you, I'm going to go off the grid now. Now let me tell you, to go off the grid with a solar installation is a tall order. For the simple reason, you have to make sure that you've got a hell of a lot of batteries. And you've got enough solar panels to charge those batteries. And then you have to deal with the reality of a solar panel. Look at this. This is the production of my solar panels at about 11 o'clock in the morning. You can see the capacity is 9.2 kW, but that is full power, everything ideal. And at this point in time when I took this screenshot, it was delivering 8.390, which is a good production. And if you look at the bottom here on the flow charts, you can see the solar panels were producing 8390 watt. The batteries were standing at 98%, that is full. They don't go higher than 98%. My house was taking 648 watt, and the rest I was pumping back to ESKOM at 7520. Now, that sounds like a lot, and it sounds like, this is a bargain, I'm producing a lot of power. But the reality of solar is visible in the next shot. This shot was 10 minutes later with some cloud moving over my place. And look at that drop. 50% drop in production. Later in the afternoon I had a situation, because it's the first day and I'm checking and I'm watching the thing. And at some points the clouds move past and the production dropped to 10% of the capacity of those panels. So it is very erratic. But the reality is that is how solar works. Now try and imagine ESKOM's nightmare trying to regulate and balance the national grid if there's a large component of solar and wind part of that. How must they cope with that erratic input? Now you can see here when it dropped down like that, I was only feeding 2704 watt back to ESKOM. Now the next shot is what's happening at night. So the solar panels obviously producing nothing, they show 1 watt. I don't know how is that. But then you can see I'm drawing 2196 watt from ESKOM. Now what is happening there is the power excessive power that my panels generated during the day and the peak hours and so forth. I'm just taking it back now. So I'm using ESKOM basically as a battery. So at night I take it back. The reality is, the kilowatts that I generate from the solar panels, I don't have to buy that from ESKOM. And that is where my savings are. Because ESKOM is not paying me anything for what I push back into the grid and things like that. And I'm not interested in even talking a deal about that. Working it like I'm working is fine. It suits me. But you must understand, if you've now said you've got an off-the-grid installation, in the next graph I'm going to show you something. This is where the load shedding was between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock in the morning. So there's no sun production, nothing. So you can see the battery drops to 84%, and then the power came back, and I charged the batteries with ESKOM power back to where I want it. Now you can set these things up not to do that and wait for the sun before it starts recharging the batteries, which I'm not going to do because I don't like that. But what is in reality going to happen is you're now off the grid. This happens just before sunrise. Your battery sits at 84%, and then the next day it's cloudy and it rains. So there's not going to be much solar to charge those batteries. So you're going to pull those batteries further down, further down, further down. And here in my area it can very easily happen that we've got for 4 or 5 days heavy cloud cover. So if you want to say you want to go off the grid, you must understand that you will have to make a hell of an investment in batteries to make provision for those days that you can't charge, so that you can still have it. And when you drop the battery to a certain level, the batteries switch off completely, because the pack doesn't allow you to go below that critical percentage. And then you're sitting without power, or you've got to start a generator. So you must think carefully when you talk about off the grid. In this situation, in my situation, I put an 8 kilowatt inverter up and a 15 kilowatt battery, and then I've got the 21 solar panels. if I wanted to go off the grid, and say I'm going to take my house off the grid, I would at least have to add at least 2 more batteries and 2 more solar banks as that all I've got. And then it's still going to be dodgy. But these guys that tell you they live off the grid and all of that, and the reality is this: if you plan your house from a word go in the boondoes, you are going to build the house to be electricity efficient, and there's a lot of equipment that you're not going to put in your house and so forth. I've got a normal house. I've got 1 deep freeze, and I've got 1 combo fridge freezer, 2 combo fridge freezers, and I've got a stand-up deep freeze and a stand-up fridge. So that's the equipment I have. Then I've got a microwave, and I've got an oven, and I've got a kettle, and I've got toasters, I've got air conditioners. Those are the things that I have. But for me to go off the grid would cost me a hell of a lot of money. The basic installation that I have, it has cost me, with the installation costs, 253,000 rand. That's a hell of a lot of money. Now there is operators here in our area from who you can now rent a solar installation. They do the installation and everything, and you pay them a monthly fee. And I have said it in, I think, one of my Skidmarks, if you want to go, oh no, I posted that on the power group. If you want to go that way, the first thing that you have to do is just take a look at the equipment they're going to install and get a price on that equipment and see if you take a loan and finance that equipment, how much it's going to cost you to work out whether you should rent a solar installation or buy your own. For me, my plant also gives me statistics on the usage and the production and everything. Plus it calculates, I had to feed the information from my ESKOM account into it. It calculates the money that I'm actually saving. And it looks like I'm saving about 100 Rand a day. Now 100 Rand a day, that's 3,000 Rand a month. That is a substantial saving on my ESKOM. But what is happening in practice to ESKOM? I'm going to pay roughly 3,000 Rand a month less to ESKOM. So that is revenue that they had, which they are no longer going to get. Now imagine 50 or 60,000 consumers like me doing that. That makes a big dent in their revenue stream. And the tragedy for ESKOM is that the people that are doing solar installations at their homes, they're the guys that were usually the good payers. So you can understand why ESKOM is in such a mess. I have said it right in the beginning when the load shedding started, that ESKOM is going to find that by the time that they've sorted out the load shedding, a large volume of their consumers would have, at that stage, would have made alternative plans and no longer wants to buy from them. And that is going to be a big problem for them. So I did this, and now if you want to look at this graph here, look again. So 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock it was down, and it dropped to 84%. But then look at the second arrow there on the right. That was a 2-hour load shedding session from 11 o'clock until 1 o'clock, in the middle of the day basically. And look what the solar panels did. The battery went down to lowest 97%. So 1% drop. Now that's when you really save, because if I didn't have the solar panels, it would have meant I would have dropped the battery again, as in that first part of the graph, and then charge that battery from ESKOM when the power comes back. And that is what is creating big problems for ESKOM with consumers that only buy inverters and batteries. The consumer doesn't save any money. The battery carries him over the 2 hours, and once the 2 hours are gone, he got to recharge that battery, so he draws that from ESKOM. But what it does to ESKOM is when the load shedding ends, all these battery chargers comes in, and there's more of a demand to charge the batteries. So the load shedding is having effects all over the place. And the problem for the ANC with the load shedding is, a lot of things they can bullshit us about it. But when the power is off, the light is off and everybody can see the light is off. They can spin it whichever they want. And if you remember, I remind you of the clip that I showed in the beginning. That is what they are doing, exactly what that little boy is doing. Because there is no rationale in what they are doing. And if you're a follower of the channel, you would have heard my interviews that I have with Hugo Krier. And we will most probably do one again this Friday night, tomorrow night, and he's going to talk about some other things that's going to make you laugh actually. It's ridiculous. The bottom line is, I get the feeling that the ANC doesn't have the will to fix the load shedding. I hope you find this information of use, and just a final reminder, when you put in solar stuff, don't take shortcuts with the installation, because you can burn your house down. And the second thing is, watch out for cheap equipment. Cheap equipment can, in the end, cost you a lot of money. Thank you for your support. Please give me a like and a subscribe and share the thing. Have a great evening.